I wonder what all those people were discussing. Well, here it is. Time to give you some more guidance on discussion questions. It's your friendly neighborhood American National Government professor with some tips for you on how to do well uh, in your discussion questions. So first off, strongly recommend that you copy each part of the prompt in the discussion question and bold it. I'm going to show you a little bit later on what I'm talking about. But here is an example from the first week's discussion question assignment. Here is the prompt. All right, that's one part of the prompt. All right, so you see how it's bolded there? That's what I suggest you do when you're preparing your answer. And I suggest you prepare it in a Word file or whatever word processing program you use and save it. Keep it separately. It says, how many times have you written an email or a post and somehow mysteriously some gremlin gets in there and you lose the email, you lose the post? Make sure you do that ahead of time in Word. Then you can upload the Word file if you want, or you can just copy and paste it into the discussion post. But anyways, this is what it looks like here. Write your answer to this part of the question here. Write full sentences, no bullet points, okay? No bullet points allowed. So here's the second part of the week 1 discussion prompt. So again, full sentences, no bullet points. This is the third part of the discussion prompt. Write your answer here. And this is the fourth part. Okay, so each part is clearly identified. The question is in bold, and so it'll be very easy for me to read through your answers and pick out each part of your answer without any problem. Okay, so there it is. Copy each part of the prompt and bold it. Put it in a Word file and save it before you're ready to post it. Use the course resources. What does this mean? First of all, always start with the textbook in your answers. Paraphrase the concept explained in the text. It's very easy to copy and paste things right out of the text in your answer, but that doesn't help me understand whether or not you understand the concept. So paraphrase the concept explained in the text, and that's how you should start. You should use APA in-text citations whenever you cite the text, and there's a slide later on that explains that in more detail. So use the textbooks first. Start with the textbook and go out from there. There's other course resources, articles, and videos that are available. They're listed in the module resources. Here is module 1. It lists the textbook at the top, a couple of different articles from the Pew Research Center, some multimedia resources, and then there's one more recommended resource down there at the bottom. All of these are available for you to use when you're developing your answer. I would also suggest that there are references that you may use. This is in the at the end of the instructor's guidance for Module 1. But some of the things I'd like to point out to you here, the Political 201 Research Guide, this is going to come in very handy as you move forward in developing your research paper. You've got this, the video is cited here, Charters of Freedom. Look at this. This is from the National Archives. That's another tremendous resource that you can use as you develop your answer and write your papers. Some of these are images and cartoons. Okay, that might be something you want to include. Not as necessary. But here's another one: National Conference of State Legislatures. Okay, their website right there. Whenever we're going to be talking about federalism, that might be a good source to use. Here are the political quizzes that you already took for week 1. The Charters of Freedom, once again, that's the National Archives. When you see archives.gov, that's the National Archives. And then Here is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, retrieved from Stanford University. Okay, another source that they used when they're developing the material. What is good about these references is they've been vetted by the faculty and staff. So these folks listed down here are part of the Ashford University faculty. They've used these sources to build the material in each module. So in this case, it's just module one, but these are other good sources of information you can use as you develop your answer. All right, there's other sources you can use as well, specifically newspapers from the library. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Here is Ashford University's library's homepage, and down at the lower left you see newspapers button there. You can click on that, and here you see the different newspaper databases that you have access to through the Ashford Library. And so these would be the places you would go for additional information to support your answer in the discussion questions. Okay, some sources to avoid at all costs. Any website ending in pedia like Wikipedia and Ballotpedia. I know they're quick and easy, but I would like you to avoid those sites and use the library. Get used to using the library. It is a very good resource for you, and it's using the library is part of the work we do as college students. It's a good resource for you, and they got librarians there to help you use it. You should also avoid websites like Quora. I see students use this website a lot, asking questions like, what is the separation of powers, or what are civil liberties? Your textbook has all the basic information you need to define concepts. I expect you to go use the textbook first. And so Quora is not necessary. I shouldn't see Quora being part of your citations. Basically, any source that doesn't come from the library. As I said, the library, all the sources are vetted there. They are quality sources. Um, Using a library is the basic work of an academic course. So go through the library. There's plenty there for you to assist you in doing your work. Check with me if in doubt. Now, there are plenty of good sources that don't come through the library. I showed you the archives.gov website, the National Archives. There's also that National Legislature website, and there are several good sources of information out there. But if you have any doubt about it, please check with me. But things to, avoid Pedia, avoid Quora, avoid things like Yahoo News and Google News and all that kind of stuff. Our aim here is to try to use the best sources we can. And going through the library or checking with me on other sources is the way to go about that. So failure to cite sources reduces the critical thinking grade. This is where I evaluate whether or not you're using sources and you're using sources properly. So if you don't use any sources at all, it seriously impacts the critical thinking grade. If your sources are of poor quality, like Yahoo News or something, that's going to impact the critical thinking grade. And I talk a little bit more later on. When I go through the discussion question rubric, I talk more about the critical thinking grade and all the parts of the discussion question grade. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit deeper. I gave you a screenshot of the Writing Center's Introduction to APA page, but I just want to show you a couple things in here. Lots of people get confused about in-text citations. Okay, so I want to just show you here every outside source you use. Whether you quote it or you paraphrase it, has to be cited in the text of your answer. Okay, if you don't do that, that's going to go back to your written communication grade. So let's take a look at what we're talking. What in the world are we talking about here with in-text citations? Here's an example. Place all the citation information at the end of the sentence here. Okay. Quotations have quotation marks, of course. This is the author's name. This is the year of the publication. This is the page. If you're using direct quotes, you cite the page number. And now our text, our online text does not have page numbers, so you're going to have to use the section number for your citations. Okay. Now, other ways of doing this. If you're citing the text, this is another way. So this is what is known as an in-text citation. Even if you're paraphrasing, you need cite in-text citation. So let's take a look at paraphrases or summaries. Okay, here's an example of a paraphrase. This sentence here is derived from this source, Cook Gumperis in 1986. That's the year of publication. But it's a summary. It's not a direct quotation. This is what I'm going to expect to see when you are using a textbook. I'm expecting you to paraphrase what you're reading in the textbook as you answer your discussion questions. Okay, so that is in-text citations in a nutshell. Want to take a look at one other thing here. Reference list. If you have in-text citations, you have to have a reference list. And if you list something in your reference list, you have to have an in-text citation. It goes hand in hand. All right. But here it is. Here is an example. There is a guide here that you can click on to go through, but that gives you the information that you need to have in your reference list, the key rules for creating a reference list. Now, and then they have examples. For the discussion question, you don't have to have a separate piece of paper. It's all in one, discussion forum box, okay? But when you are submitting your final paper, your reference list has to be on a separate sheet. Okay, so that's a minor detail. The important thing is that when you are using references, when you're using sources, whether you get them from the course materials or outside sources, you must both cite them in the text of your answer and include a reference list. So I hope that's clear. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Okay, so let's see how we get to the grading rubric in the discussion questions. So here we have the student view of the course homepage, and here are some of the announcements I've already posted. So we go over here to modules, click on that, and here we go down to week 1, post your introduction, week 1, discussion 1. Here it is right there. Click on that, and here it is. Week 1, discussion 1. And it gives you, the due dates, the due days, I should say. Day 3, the initial post is due, and then day 7, the end of the week, Monday, your responses to your classmates is due. So it gives you some prepare resources. You should have read chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook before you answer the questions. There's also the week 1 instructor guidance. And I would also say, if you go back into the modules, if you look at module 1, there are other resources for you to access. We go back here to Module 1. Module 1 resources. You have the textbook, but here's some articles as well. A couple articles, both of them from the Pew Research Center. There's some multimedia and resources as well. So just to give you an idea that there's more than a textbook available to you when you're answering these discussion questions, as well as any outside resources you use. I already kind of covered that as what other sources you should be using. So let's go back here. Week 1, discussion 1 gives you some reflection points here, and then the 4 points of the post that you need to answer, that you need to complete. And this is what I told you earlier in a previous slide on this presentation. What you do is you copy each one of these, copy them all into Word, okay, and put them in bold and answer each prompt thoroughly. Okay, no bullet points, full sentences. Answer each prompt thoroughly, referring to the textbook and other sources that you use. Your initial post must be 300 words, and make sure again that you are citing your sources, not just stats or outside sources. I expect to see APA citations for the textbook and for any of the sources that you use within the course. Okay, that's an important part of your academic work. And then by the end of the week, by day 7, respond to at least 2 of your classmates' posts. So, important points here. Respecting each other, of course, but asking questions, raising new points for consideration, requesting clarification. These are the types of things that are going to distinguish your contribution to the course and to the discussion in particular here. So let's take a look now at the details of the rubric. How do you get to the rubric? Well, you click on this little icon here and you say show rubric, and here it is. All right. I'll stretch this out here so you can see everything well. There's 4 points or 4 parts of the rubric. There is the general knowledge, critical thinking, engagement and participation, and then your written communication. So here in the general content section, do you understand the concepts of the course in this week? And what are you going to draw on initially is going to be the textbook. Everybody should be citing the textbook. And that doesn't mean just copying and pasting whatever is in what the authors write. You have to paraphrase it, put it in your own words, show that you understand what's being written here. Okay, and also this is the place where, have you addressed all elements of the prompt, right? Addresses all aspects of the prompt. So if there are 4 bullet points, there are 4 aspects to the prompt, and you should be thoroughly addressing each one of those. So if you don't address all the points of the prompt, well, then we're over here and below expectations. Critical thinking. Have you clearly answered the question? Are you using information that is relevant? Does it go into depth enough to answer the question? Is your thought pattern logical? Does it make sense? Does the argument or the answer flow logically from point to point? This all goes into critical thinking. This is also where I evaluate your use of outside sources. Okay, answers that do not cite the text and other sources are going to be below expectations. You must be able to use the resources that you're given in the course as well as find outside resources in order to support your answer. Another part of this critical thinking aspect of the rubric is to make sure that you tie everything together. So a lot of times I'll read answers that will end up citing a bunch of statistics or other information, or will end with a quote or something like that. That doesn't connect back to your answer. It doesn't help me understand how you're using this material and how it's relevant. Once again, going back to relevance. So think about, what's the point I'm trying to make here, and how is this information I'm using supporting that point? Okay. The engagement participation, the initial discussion prompt gives some good guidance here. It's important not to simply be a cheerleader and tell your classmates what a great job they've done on their post. That really doesn't contribute to the conversation at all. That's below expectations. Be respectful, be probing, bring in other outside sources, anything that advances the conversation uh, with appropriate topic-based responses, okay? Make sure that you are addressing the topic of the discussion and not go off on tangents. Written communication, this is where spelling and grammar comes in. Another big sticking point is, as part of grammar, I guess, is capitalization. Proper nouns have to be capitalized. Okay, all these types of little details that go into putting together a quality answer. This is also where I evaluate the proper citation of your material. So, have you cited it properly in the text? Have you cited the material in your list of resource or list of references, I should say? Is all that properly done? And finally, on this easy to understand aspect of the rubric, I suggest very strongly that you read your answer out loud, preferably to another person. Yes, there is difference between written and oral communication, but if you read your written answer out loud and it makes sense to the person who's hearing you, then you should be in good shape for this piece. But sometimes sentences are put together that really don't make any sense. They're just kind of strung together. So it makes it difficult to understand and difficult to follow the points you're making. So just some tips on how to really do well on this assignment and how to use this rubric. Well, there it is. I'm still not from the government, but I am here to help. I hope you found that going over this discussion question assignment in detail, and going through the rubric and looking at the tips for sources and all the resources you have available to you has been helpful. Remember to check the course homepage for announcements daily. And the two ways to get in touch with me is through the Canvas inbox, or the Canvas mail system, and through my email. So I hope you found this useful, and please, once again, don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or need assistance.